Hey everyone. So today we are now up to our fifth micro lecture. Again, we're talking about NDBI's naturalistic behavioral developmental interventions. And the focus of this micro lecture is going to be on functional communication training. So if you hear the acronym FCT, that's what we're talking about here. So the first question, of course, is what is functional communication training? My goal for this session is to have you leave here having an introductory understanding of what that is. So FCT is actually a proactive approach to reduce problem behaviors. So in other words, you're anticipating a potential obstacle for your client using this method based on history of behaviors. It involves two components: identifying a reason for a behavior and teaching a more appropriate communication skill that actually serves that same function or replaces the behavior with communication. And you'll see what that means in a moment. So the rationale here put forward by Miranda and Iacono, I thought it was a good quote. I'm not a fan of quotes, but I figured it was really the best way to say this. So problem behaviors are often maintained, remember when we think about maintenance and generalization, by the same types of socially mediated consequences, attention, access, escape, that also maintain early emerging communication skills. In other words, when toddlers start to speak, they speak for attention, they speak to access objects. So for our individuals on the spectrum, when they have issues communicating, they use maladaptive behaviors instead. That's basically the interpretation of this quote. So FCT requires a thorough assessment of the function of any behavior. Go back to those slides that talk about those 5 functions of behaviors. And as a reminder, you're never doing this in a silo. You're always working with a licensed and certified behavior analyst. The goal of FCT is to support the use and treatment of challenging behavior. And it has been applied to many forms of communication. So it's not exclusive to verbal communication only, as well as many kinds of behaviors. So successful use of FCT involves 3 steps. The first is identifying the function of a given behavior, selecting an appropriate alternative means, and implementing instruction under relevant conditions. In other words, you want to help your client practice in the context in which he will be communicating. So again, let's just recall the 5 functions of behaviors: medical, escape, attention, tangible, and sensory. And this will be a common thread throughout. And I wanted to move on now and show you 2 examples of FCT applied. Because this course is focused on the lifespan, I'm using one example from early intervention and one example from adult day-hab services. So here we have Marissa, who is approaching 3 years old. She receives early intensive behavioral intervention, that's EIBI, for 20 hours per week at home, and attends a center-based preschool 5 days per week in the morning. She also receives ABA, speech and occupational therapy services. Her behavior is biting. And here's an example of a scenario. She and her brother were playing in the den of their home. They began fighting over a little people playset, particularly the park scene. Marissa wants her turn to put her character on the park bench in a particular location. Think back to RRBs. But her brother has his person already on it, and she gets angry and bites him. So, after a thorough assessment, the function of the behavior was determined to be tangible. She wants that toy on that bench. So the second part in this process is training verbal scripts to communicate this tangible access, such as my turn, I want it, put it there, can I move your person? Now, can I move your person may be ambitious in terms of MLU relative to a 2-word phrase such as my turn, and it's up to the clinician to know if that's really within the client's reach. And I want you also to notice the hierarchy of difficulty. So here we have a least to most in terms of difficulty. And again, that's also embedding planning ahead in your sessions. Step 3 is implementing that systematic instruction. So the first step in this was to introduce the first script, which was the easiest, monitoring mastery criteria, and then training the parents and the sibling. Then we set up a reinforcement system for Marissa and her sibling. Notice the sibling also got reinforced, and there was an in-service for home staff and school staff continually monitoring this behavior and the communication that ideally would be a result from it. Moving on to the day hab home-based example, we have Mark, who's 23 years old. He attends the Genesis Day Hab program and resides in the Genesis group home. And his behaviors are hitting and swatting. So, think about it. When you have a 2-year-old swatting and hitting, it's not a big deal. But when you have a 23-year-old, it's a big deal, right? So these behaviors have to be monitored. So the first was identifying the function, which was escape from demands. After any kind of verbal request or demand was presented and there was frustration during a task, this behavior would be seen. So again, it's escape. And the second was selecting an appropriate alternative means. And here are some examples. I need space. I need help. I don't understand. It's too hard. I need a break. I don't want that. Step 3, materials were developed and placed in Mark's daily agenda that he used extremely regularly. And the script was reviewed with Mark across environments, and the staff were in-serviced across all of these environments. And here is an example of the scripts from his planner, things I can say when I am upset or angry. And before I say thank you, I just wanted to let you know that Mark's behaviors went from over 1,000 a day to under 10 based on that FCT approach. So with that, I hope that I've inspired you to use FCT with a focus on communication as you move forward. Thanks so much.